we continue in Genesis chapter 41, which actually closes chapter 41, but opens up and starts off the time of the plague years. So let's read this. And the 7 years of plenteousness that was in the land of Egypt were ended. Genesis 41, 53 to 57. It wouldn't be much of a surprise if the citizens in Egypt were questioning the forced gathering of grain, even into the 7th year of plenty. Can you imagine? 7 years. You have so much grain that you don't know what to do with it. And here along comes Joseph and his crew, and they say, this is what we're going to take. This is what we're going to take. And then 6 years pass by. You're in your 7th year, and you're going, oh, come on, this is going to last forever. What are you doing? You don't need to do that. This is silly. But yeah. See, it would be natural to take this fantastic and amazing abundance for granted. And that's what people started to do. But as suddenly as it started, the 7 years of plenteousness, as it says, that was in the land of Egypt were ended. Suddenly, there was nothing growing anymore. Suddenly, it just stopped. Joseph might even have anticipated to the very day the 7th full year ended. And the 7 years of dearth began to come. That's the word that the Bible uses, dearth. According as Joseph had said, and the dearth was in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. Now dearth, D-E-A-R-T-H, in the Webster's Dictionary is defined as, number 1, a scarcity, an extreme scarcity, a dearth. Number 2, it is defined as a want, a need, a famine. And third, dearth is defined as barren, sterile. All of these applied to those second 7 years. It was according as Joseph had predicted, and it was not isolated to just Egypt. It extended to all neighboring lands. You see, if it was a famine that was just in Egypt, it would be tied to the Nile River. The Nile River raises and lowers a certain amount to give moisten the soil, to give extra crops, and then it shrinks back, and then you harvest it. It wasn't dependent on the Nile River. It was a supernatural thing. It was a God thing. But why would he do that? In the sessions that come ahead, we will discuss that. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, it says, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. What he says to you, do. Inhabitants of Egypt undoubtedly set aside personal provisions, which soon were eaten up. I mean, we have things in the fridge. We have things in our cupboard, in our pantry, that we can use for when we have no money. And you know what? It ran out. Famished means close to starving. And the people cried out to Pharaoh, who was considered a god. And Pharaoh diverted them to go to Joseph, whom he had appointed to providing and laying up corn against this time and distributing it for a price. What he tells you to do, do it. And the famine was over all the face of the earth. Now, when we say over all the face of the earth, we mean worldwide. But that phrase doesn't mean that here in the Bible. And Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. Waxed sore means it was really serious. When it is said that the famine was over all the face of the earth, you know what it means? It means that the earth, the face of the earth, was barren and sterile. Face of all the earth in Egypt was barren and sterile. Nothing could grow on it. It wasn't yielding any fruit nor grain. Then, to keep the citizens from starving, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians. Remember, they couldn't count how much grain there was. And believe me, God knows. God knew. And God supplied grain for Egypt and nations all over the world for 7 long years. And the famine was over all the face of the earth. To keep the citizens from starving, Joseph opened up all the storehouses, as we said. See, it was sold to the Egyptians. Joseph was a good economist. See, most of the grain was brought very, very cheaply. It was bought for a cheap price during the times of plenty with Pharaoh's money. And even selling the grain at a modern price right now would make a great return for the investment. Do you know what? We're right now in the year 2020 in what people have called a pandemic, where we have to have required by our bosses to wear personal equipment and safety equipment. And you know what? People are gouging us, charging a lot of money for that stuff. But Joseph was in charge. He didn't have to charge much, but he did charge more than what he paid. That's what makes him a good economist. And you know what? Pharaoh, in spite of charging reasonable rates, made a killing. So, he made a killing. He got his money back. Plus. So, and the famine, it says, waxed sore in the land of Egypt. This is another way of saying the famine hit the Egyptians extremely hard. The only grain to eat was the grain that was stored in the storehouses, in the tunnel system, in the granary system. And all countries came into Egypt to Joseph to buy corn, because the famine was so sore in all lands. There we have it again. The famine was so sore. It was so sore in Egypt. It was so sore in all the lands. Not only did the famine hit Egypt hard, but the whole known world was affected. Furthermore, this verse was saying that Joseph saved the world. I'll read that again. And all countries came to Egypt to Joseph to buy corn because the famine was so sore in all lands. Did you get that? Did you get that? This verse was really saying that Joseph saved the world. Savior of the world. Now, whom do we know holds that title? Savior of the world. If your first answer was Jesus, you are absolutely right. Up until this point in the story of Joseph, there were lots of other times we could have said Joseph is a type of Jesus. You see, would you be able to see other times where he would be a type of Jesus? I can think of a few. Bread of life. Ooh, bread of life. Presumed dead until he was resurrected. Oh my goodness. There are so many other types. You could probably think of a lot more. I don't want to do the commentary about that. You probably thought about it before. But yes, Joseph was a type because he really did save the world at that time. And God used him mightily. And if God were to allow you to be used, would you give God permission to use